Hello and welcome to another video by the Travel Family Academy. My name is Marae, and today we are going to be talking about how to choose the first flight with your baby. Remember, we are an academy made by parents, for parents. Our goal is to help everyone that wants to travel with kids be able to do it more effortlessly and have more fun while doing it so you can do more of it. We want to normalize traveling with our kids because there are so many benefits to doing so. And we find that a lot of us get overwhelmed thinking about the flight part of the trip and not really thinking so much about everything there is to enjoy once you get into your destination. So we made it our mission to teach you, to help you find all the tips you need to ensure smooth travels. If you need any more support, you can always find us on Instagram at Travel Family Academy or visit our blog at travelfamilyacademy.com/blog. If there's any subject that you're not finding in any of our videos, please let us know in the comment section below. We'll make sure to make a video helping you with any and every tip that we have. And we also have a fantastic course called the Ready to Fly Mom that teaches you everything from A to Z regarding flying with your baby. Without further ado, let's jump into today's video where we're going to be discussing how to choose your first flight with a baby. Now, for the sake of this video, we're going to assume your baby is going to be a baby and not a toddler. That means your baby is less than 1 year old. We'll make another video for toddlers, but if you're flying with a baby, more likely than not, you are freaking the F out. Am I right? Even if you're a seasoned traveler, you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? I know this because that was me. We've been traveling for at least 10 years full time by the time we had our first flight with our baby. And even though we knew how to fly left and right, back and forth, and had masters sleeping with one eye open and being hit 20 times by the airplane cart, it was still so overwhelming to think of that first flight with a baby. So we want to break it down for you. And first and foremost, let you know that if you are feeling overwhelmed or stressed about flying with your baby, this is normal. This is totally normal, and you're not alone, because the reality is there's a lot of people out there giving misinformation and sharing all sorts of tips and tricks, and no level of tips and tricks is going to give you everything you need to be able to fly, which is why we created a course, because we wanted to make sure that you heard it from real parents doing real flights. If you're about to jump on a flight with your baby and you're feeling really anxious, I just want to reassure you that, one, you can do this. If you can manage a baby at home, if you can manage a baby, in every stressful situation that you probably already have, experienced, like driving a car, then you can definitely do it on the plane. Two, if you're worried about people and how they react to you having a baby, this is something you're going to have to overcome. A lot of people do not think that babies and children should travel. They think they should be in a glass cage, perfectly secure until they're adults. But the reality is, the more you expose a child to all of these circumstances and all of these situations, the faster they'll adapt and learn how to behave in these moments. We started traveling with our toddler when she was only 2 months old, and she's now 3.5 years old and can sit on a 12, 13, 14-hour flight, play independently, hang out, watch movies, play with her toys, color, and not bother a single soul. This is not because our child is special. This is because we have literally helped her be comfortable in flight from 2 months old. So if this is you, let me help you how to plan your first flight. The one thing you want to consider when you're booking a flight with your baby is how well your baby handles being in small spaces, right? So if you have a child that, for example, doesn't like a car seat, even though a car seat is heavily recommended, I wouldn't take a car seat on a flight, right? I had a toddler that cried bloody murder every time she even saw the car seat, from the moment she was born until she was about 5 months old. Needless to say, on that first flight, she did not go in a car seat. I don't care how safe it is. I'm not going to sit 4 hours in a flight with a child that's just screaming nonstop, right? So these are things that you need to consider. Second of all, if your child does like the car seat, then obviously bringing a car seat on board is going to make a huge difference, especially if you're worried about sleep, right? So a lot of us are like, oh, how do we get the kid to sleep? Oh, you have to book it on the nap time, and oh, you have to book it on the night time and start the week before, and la 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 la. Okay, these are tips and tricks that can work for a lot of children, but they're not guaranteed to work for all children. But one thing that I can tell you is that if your child is used to sitting in a car seat in the car and taking naps, they're likely going to sit in a car seat in a plane and take naps. So definitely something you want to bring along. If you're flying with a brand new baby and you've never flown before with a baby, and you're not an avid traveler or somebody who enjoys flying, I wouldn't start with a 5-hour flight or a 20-hour flight. I would start with a 1, 2, or 3-hour flight, right? So it's more likely that you will be able to manage and enjoy a flight that's short-lived than put yourself in a super stressful situation for that first flight. So something to think about. Another thing to consider is that if you're flying to change time zones, you want to keep this in mind, not so much when you have a tiny baby because they nap so much, so it's not something you're going to have to worry about, but as they get a little bit older and actually have a schedule, you do want to be really mindful of this, especially for when you get to your destination. If you have a short time, a 1-week trip, the last thing you want is to spend half of your vacation underslept and struggling to live because you're so tired because your toddler is in a different time zone. So it's something you can do ahead. Again, we go through all of this and teach you all of the details of how to accomplish this inside of our course, The Ready to Fly Mom. We'll put a link here in the description below so you can access it whenever you feel like it. But something to keep in mind is that you want to prep yourself more so than your child. When your child becomes a toddler, there are so many things you can do to help them get accustomed to the flight, feel more comfortable in the flight, etc., etc. But when they're babies, they really don't have a lot of control or awareness of what's happening. So what really matters is that you, the parent, is aware and prepared on what you can encounter on these flights. A lot of us tend to think that straight flights, direct flights, are the better option. But if you ask me, between having a 5-hour straight flight with a brand new baby that's never flown before, if I'm not an avid traveler, or having a flight that has a 2-hour layover at an airport, I would rather do the layover. Why? Because then I can get out, I can stretch my legs, the baby can be stimulated by other things, we can sit down in the nursing room and nurse quietly, I can have time to go to a cafe, get some warm water, make some formula, whatever it is, right? So it's a lot easier to handle getting in and out of the plane than being stuck inside a plane for 5 hours with a baby that, let's say, is screaming nonstop because their ears are popping, right? So these are things you want to consider. How likely are you to enjoy a 5-hour flight? And then how likely is your baby to enjoy a 5-hour flight? So obviously you won't know if your baby's going to like a flight if it's never flown before. But if you're not an avid traveler who's doing cross-country trips for 5 hours every few months, more likely than not, you're not going to want to sit in a plane for 5 hours. So then adding a baby to the equation is only going to cause more stress. In this situation, a shorter flight will be better, even if that entails a connection. Because even though you'll be at the airport, you have access to lounges, nursing rooms, changing tables that are way bigger than the ones you can find on the plane, etc., etc. The most important thing is to remember that you can handle whatever situation is thrown at you just like you do at home. But the more you can minimize that stress for you, the more likely you are to handle the situation with grace and not losing your mind over whatever has happened to your baby. Another thing I'll recommend is to allow extra time at the airport. I cannot stress this enough. I know nobody wants to spend extra time at the airport, but I actually see so many parents get into the airport 2 hours before the flight when they have a baby. And that's how early you have to be at the airport regularly. So what makes you think that it's not going to be like 10 times more stressful to handle all the baby gear to security, getting your baby on board, changing the diaper, feeding the baby, blah, 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 before you board a flight? Give yourself some room for error. Arrive at least 1 hour earlier than you normally would so that you can stroll through security, stroll through the airport, and if they want to open your every bag and put your stroller upside down through security and all that stuff, then at least you're not going to be having a nervous attack because you think your flight is going to leave you behind. Another thing that I would really like for you to think about is where you're sitting on a plane. So a lot of us have preferences already of where we like to sit on a plane based on our own experiences, but once you have a baby, that changes. So for example, a lot of people like the bulkhead seats. Those are the seats that are right in front of the walls where you have extra room. That's fantastic. But if you're bringing, let's say, a car seat or a seat extender, or your baby doesn't like a lot of movement or commotion in order to sleep, those seats may not be ideal. Another thing to remember about those seats is that they're usually directly behind the restroom. So if you have a child that's sensitive to noise or easily stimulated, that kid is probably not going to be falling asleep with 85 people making a line, stretching, doing yoga, or whatever it is right before going to the restroom, right? So you want to think about all these details before you jump into like, okay, I'm going to get this seat because I have extra leg room. Sometimes extra leg room is a small thing to sacrifice for having a child that's going to sleep on the flight. I personally prefer having a window seat because I can put my car seat in there, put a blanket on top, make it really quiet, or at least bring a sound machine if my baby is, sound sensitive, and just have a little cocoon for them in the corner. They can also be looking out the window, and I have a lot more privacy for breastfeeding. That's my personal preference. It could be different for everyone, But I want you to think about what you like to do on a plane and how you can envision doing these things with your baby. Because if you don't, you're going to get to the plane and be like, oh, but I thought this was more comfortable. And then, oh, wait, but I didn't think about the baby. Another thing to keep in mind is that more likely than not, your baby is going to want to be on you the entire time. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to get the seat for my baby so they can sit in the car seat and I have free hands. This is great if you have a long haul flight because obviously you're not going to want to hold your baby for the duration of the flight. But if you have a small, short flight, think that your newborn or your infant is more likely than not want to be on you regardless. So keep this in mind when you think about your own comfort when you choose the seats that are better going to work for you. Let's talk about what to do at your destination when you have a layover. So a lot of times we freak out when we think, okay, we have a layover. What am I going to do at the airport? Of course, you can always go to a restaurant, go to a cafe, or do anything else like that. A lot of airports have playgrounds. A lot of airports have, some airports even have zoos and kid parks and all that stuff. But a really simple and easy way to find comfort in an airport is to go to a lounge. Almost every single airport out there has a lounge available. And even though it's an extra expense, it is so worth it for the little peace of mind and quiet that you can get when you arrive at your destination. I am a big fan of using lounges when traveling with little kids because it can give you a very quiet and small and nice space for you to breastfeed, eat something, and not be completely overstimulated by everything else that goes around you. Remember that it's not just the overstimulation that your baby goes through, but also you as a parent having to look around all the equipment, all the gear, and sorting out things for your baby. Let's talk about toys and entertainment. For the sake of this video, we said we were going to talk about babies 12 months old or younger. I cannot stress this enough. Your baby does not need however many toys you think they need. One of the biggest mistakes we did at the beginning when traveling with our baby was bring a backpack sometimes full of toys thinking, oh, they're going to get bored. So let me tell you right now that if your child is less than 9 months old or even 12 months old, this is not for every child, of course, but more likely than not, they're going to nap on the plane. Between the movement and the white noise of the plane itself and the tiredness after being stimulated from walking through the whole airport, there's a high chance your kid is going to sleep on that plane regardless. But even if they don't, at that age, they're so excited about what is happening around them that even just looking at your next door neighbor could be enough stimulus. You do not need to bring a whole bag of toys. More likely than not, that bag of toys is going to end up on the floor of the plane. And then you're going to have to spend 20 minutes picking it up before landing. So do not make that mistake. If you do have an older toddler, over 1 year old, I do recommend that you do bring some toys. If you want to learn more about which kind of toys to bring or need ideas for entertainment, we actually have a printable kit that we bring for our children and tons of moms in our community bring as well. It's called the Fly and Play Kit. We'll include a link at the bottom as well. It's very inexpensive. You can purchase it and print it over and over again, and they're quiet toys that you can bring for kids. And we'll also include a link to our Amazon storefront where we have a whole list of recommended toys for each age group that you can bring on flights. My one thing about toys, though, and entertainment is to make sure you spread them out. If you bring all the toys out at once, one, they're going to get stimulated too much, and two, you're going to run out of ideas. So the more toys kids have available to them does not mean the more they'll play. A lot of times when they have more toys, that means that they're going to get overstimulated, get bored of the toys, and actually play less. So spread out your toys throughout the entire flight, especially if you have a layover with a second flight, because sometimes you will have delays or cancellations, and having those toys in your back pocket to bring out can save the moment from your child being completely bored or them having something to play with. Another consideration that a lot of us have when we're flying with kids is food. There are some moms out there that don't believe in food, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to assume that food is important to you and your baby, just like it is to me and my baby. So obviously, if you have a baby that's less than 6 months old, your main concern is going to be either breastfeeding or formula. Once they pass that 6-month mark, they're going to be eating solids. So here's what I would have you consider for your first flight. First of all, if you're bringing formula, I would buy one of these devices that they have on Amazon. Again, you can find it in our list below on the link on our Amazon store that separates already your formula by feeding. So you don't have to sit there and scoop it out and try to measure how much formula you need. Second of all, have a bottle of water or a thermos with you with hot water already. If you don't have this ready, you can easily go to any cafe at the airport and ask for hot water, or as soon as you're bored, you can let the flight attendant know that you need some hot water and she'll bring it to you. So get some hot and cold water, mix it together, make your formula, and have it ready before takeoff. Because having a baby breastfeed or drink something or chew on something before takeoff is going to allow them to not feel the ear pressure as much or at all. and therefore not having freak out when the plane is taking off. This is super helpful. If they're already eating solids, I want you to think about what they enjoy at home that is not too messy. Obviously, at the 6 month to 1 year mark, it's always kind of messy when they eat, but try not to feed them on the plane something that is super messy. Like, for example, don't bring rice, even if they love rice, right? The last thing you want is to be cleaning the plane or to have the plane be so dirty after you leave it, it looks like a crime scene. So we want to be considerate of that. But bring foods that you know already your child enjoys. I cannot stress this enough. The flight and the airport is not the place for you to try new foods or have your toddler try new foods. Maybe you have a very adventurous eater and that works out fine, but the last thing you need is to be on a flight with a toddler that refuses to eat whatever's available on the flight and there's nothing else you can give them and now they're hangry. Oh my gosh, it's the worst. So think of whatever they're like at home, and from that same list of things they like at home, make sure you reduce it into things that are not messy, are not crumbly, are not different bits and pieces, and pack those in smaller containers and bring them with you. If you're flying with a baby or a toddler, you can bring an extra bag of snacks at no extra cost, and this is universal for almost every single airline we've ever flown in. So don't worry about bringing extra food or having an extra bag of food. You're better off having food that you know your child will enjoy versus having to risk your kid being hungry on a plane. That's the last thing you want. If you have a child that's a little bit older, you can get more creative with the food. But again, we highly recommend that you bring foods that you already know your kid is going to enjoy, so you avoid having a child that refuses to eat and therefore is cranky. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions regarding this subject, make sure you write them in the comments below, or come check us out on Instagram at Travel Family Academy. Send us a DM. We have tons of resources available to you for free and also paid. So whatever it is that you need regarding flying with children, we can help you with. Come check us out and let us know your questions. Do not forget to subscribe if you like our content, and we will see you next week.